welcome to the Unwritten Podcast. Today, I have Tracy Pleschourt. She is a certified life coach and founder of her company, Self-Made, a platform dedicated to helping people master their mind and create more fulfilling lives. She, as a person, transitioned from a very successful career in advertising, and now she does full-time coaching. After overcoming personal struggles with her health, weight, alcohol abuse, and a cycle of self-sabotage, today Tracy wants to share her unique framework for how she got out of that and to make a more fulfilling life. She's also a co-host of a podcast with her daughter to inspire self-improvement in all of us. Enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe if you're listening to this wherever you are. It supports the show, and I'll see you there. Thank you. Welcome to the Unwritten Podcast with your host, Thomas Malpass, where we are on a mission to help the world find more purpose, passion, and peace in their everyday lives. Through deep conversations and connection, tune in because we are all on this journey of life together. Well, Tracy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Can you tell me, who are you? And yes, and what led you to do what you do today?
I consider myself a life coach. I am certified, so a lot of people consider me a life coach. And what led me to take that title and pursue that as a career almost 5-6 years ago was this undeniable urge to mentor people, assist people, cheer people on through kind of these hurdles in their life. I've always felt kind of called to really inspire people and help people feel something different. And I've done that in different ways throughout my entire career, throughout my entire life. But becoming a life coach really formalized that for me. That's literally what I do all day, every day now. And so my past career was in advertising. I was the director of operations, so I was at a high level. And I actually got to do a little bit of mentoring and influencing in that role, but I also am an entrepreneur at heart. And so I think I was really kind of an employee, or an entrepreneur trying to fit into an employee's body when I was in that role. And I wanted to take a stab at creating my own thing. So now I first and foremost consider myself a life coach, but I'm also the founder of Self-Made. We're a multi-six-figure business that, has an online platform where people can come to learn how to think differently. And I have a method or a framework that teaches people a way to think so that they feel more satisfied, so they feel more in control. Most of us walk around day after day suffering unnecessarily only because we've never been taught how to think. And I think a lot of people can agree that we go to school, we have this formal educational experience, and we're taught what to think. And then we're tested on our ability to memorize how to, or what to think. And nobody ever teaches you how to think. And so that's what Self-Made does. We're kind of that next step in the educational experience. I tend to attract a lot of lifelong learners. So you have to be open to better understanding yourself and willing to, you know, try new frameworks. And my
Mm-hmm.
promise to those who are willing is that it is life altering. It'll absolutely change your life because we experience life through our feelings. And so the way I teach
Mm.
to think creates a different feeling. And when you start to compound that day after day after day, before you know it, you're living a life that you might not even recognize, but you're very satisfied with. So that's what I do.
Mm.
It's super fulfilling. It's super, it just, there's days where I wake up. Today was actually one of them where I woke up and I'm like, I am so lucky that I get to do this. I have a 9 a.m. call on Wednesdays where all of our members can come and get group coaching. And I love being able to help those people who kind of self select as needing to think or feel differently or to get different results in their life. It's just so rewarding. And then, in addition to that, we also offer courses on particular
Mm.
subjects. And I always say they're kind of life's most common curveballs, if you will, like, wanting to lose weight or wanting to heal a relationship or wanting to advance in your career.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things that we apply our framework that we teach to everyone, but we apply it very specifically to a
Mm.
certain circumstance. And then we build a course around it. So you have lots of options when you come to Self-Made You in how you receive the information, how are kind of assisted in applying what it is that you learn. But yeah, it's a very, even though we serve a lot of people, you very much feel like you are being taken care of, like you have this more intimate experience with our coaches. So
Mm.
it's incredible, and I feel very fortunate that I have the opportunity to continue to evolve this business and impact lives, and the momentum just keeps on growing. So we have a very big, audacious goal of becoming a household name.
Mm.
So it
That's
does
awesome.
require, yeah. So it requires me to do things like this, get out onto other people's podcasts and expose the world to what we can help them with.
Um, why do you think you felt called, or why do you think you felt you had this urge to ultimately decide to, like, entrepreneurship, like creating something aside, like why do you, like Tracy Pleschourt, why do you ultimately think you decided to go down this path and create something to potentially impact and life altering, changing people's lives? Why do you
Yeah,
think you chose that
yeah,
instead of something that could have just made money or whatever?
yeah. I think, everybody looks at compensation and experiences compensation in their own way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, of course, I get compensated through, in financial ways, but I also
Hmm.
get compensated in the knowing that I am altering people's lives. That's amazing.
Mm.
And the only reason why that is so important to me is because I also know what it's like to suffer. I spent
Mm.
many years overeating and over drinking and overspending and really beating myself up over certain relationships. I didn't know how to think about those things in a
Mm.
way that was compassionate and empathetic. I would basically spin out or just be like stunted or stalled in my effort
Mhm.
because I was so overwhelmed and so frustrated. And I didn't know how to handle stress, and I didn't know how to be innovative and come up with new approaches because I was literally operating out of fear. I
Mm.
didn't know how to get beyond the fear to
Mhm.
move through some of those hurdles. And so I think I would make fear mean that I was broken. or that I was a bad person, or an iteration of
Mm.
fear, maybe anger or frustration. If I would experience those feelings, I would somehow convince myself that I was so broken beyond repair and unworthy that I couldn't get past it. And that's truly the definition of suffering. It's when you make pain mean something about yourself, because pain
Mm.
is actually part of life. But when you make pain mean something like you're unworthy or you're
Like an
broken,
identity attached to it or
yeah,
something.
yeah, then you start to suffer. And that's so unnecessary. And so, the simple answer to your question is that I know what it's like to suffer only because I was never taught how to think about my weight, or how
Mm.
to think about stress, or how to think about, the responsibilities that I had as a mother and as an executive and, as an employee. I didn't know how to think about those things in any sort of way that was helpful. I thought about
Mm.
those things in a way that created a lot of stress. And then I would make stress mean that something very wrong has, gone on. And that's just not true. It's like stress is a very normal feeling. It's part of the human experience, but I would make it mean something about me, and I didn't know how to process that. So I would numb those feelings with food and alcohol or online shopping, anything I could do to run away from it. And so that doesn't end well. When you do that
Yeah.
repeatedly, now you're creating habits, which then create addictions, and it just spirals so quickly. So I know what that's like, and I want to help people navigate that in a different sort of way.
I mean, I could relate. Sounds like you lived a life of self-sabotage.
Hmm.
Does that sound right?
Hmm.
Where whenever you felt stressed, your go-to was a form of self-sabotage. Your coping mechanism was self-sabotage and like choosing to suffer instead of choosing like gratitude or compassion, self-love.
Hmm.
Did you have like any what was like that moment that like snapped you out of it? Like, man, I need to like Tracy, like talking to yourself, like Tracy, man, like I need to snap out of it.
Yeah, it's the moment that I realized I actually had a choice. I think that,
Mm.
to your point, yeah, I was self-sabotaging, but I wasn't doing it intentionally. Most people aren't.
Mm.
Most people are self-sabotaging in an unintentional way. But when you realize that you actually have a choice, that's when the light goes on. And it's like, oh, well, why am I sitting here, beating myself over the head when I don't have to be? Like that,
Mm.
it really, like, that can be the metaphor for what's actually going on. You don't have to keep beating yourself up, over this. It's like you can choose to think differently. And I never knew that that was even an option. I just thought every circumstance was the truth. The thoughts that I had about
Mm.
circumstances, I just believed those to be true. I never questioned them. And so when you recognize that you have a choice and you can actually question your own thinking and your
Yeah.
beliefs, and, by the way, beliefs are formulated like from your past experiences, sometimes as your childhood, sometimes as the messaging that you're exposed to. There's lots of different influences. So
Mhm.
some people believe that, going through therapy might reveal where, this is, what the root cause is. And that can
Yeah.
be helpful. I will often work side by side with a therapist for on behalf of a client. I don't believe that's always necessary. I think when there's things like trauma, in the mix, or any sort of, mental health diagnosis, I think then therapy absolutely can be beneficial. But I don't always believe it's necessary to pinpoint where these
Mm.
beliefs came from. The fact of the matter is,
Yeah.
you've got it, right? And so let's just learn how to think differently so you can move on from that. So
No,
that.
I agree. Just a quick point on therapy is I 100% agree on therapy, and I actually have like a sponsor with BetterHelp, but I think when therapy gets kind of toxic is when you're it's like you manifest what you focus on. So if that's all you focus on, your problems, and you're just venting and nothing, like you're just stagnant and nothing's going anywhere, you know? I think that's when therapy can get kind of iffy.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important to assess, what's working, what's not working, and what you want to do going forward. Like, there's so many people that just kind of blindly follow some script and they don't really
Mm,
take the ownership or responsibility for what's next. And
yeah.
we all have agency over our life. We all have free will, but so many people don't believe that. They think that life is happening to them and that they just,
Mm,
need to fulfill some script. And it's like, I would, suggest if you're in therapy or you're in any sort of, organized help,
yeah.
constantly assess, is this working for me? No matter if
Yeah.
you are using a personal trainer or you're getting your hair done by somebody, like, it's important to assess, is this working? What's working? What's not working? What do I want to do different? Like, that's how you live a more evolved, fulfilling, controlled life, when you start
Mhm.
to like sit in the driver's seat and ask yourself those kinds of questions. You don't have to make it mean, if something isn't working, you don't have to make that mean that something has gone terribly wrong. It means you actually had the awareness that
Mhm.
you could get something better from this experience, or, from your money or from your time. Like, so I think that no matter what resource you're using, you need
Mhm.
to keep yourself in the driver's seat by making decisions, constantly asking yourself, like, what is it that I want? Why do I want it?
Mhm.
That's what has you thinking in a way that creates self trust and self reliance. I mean, and that's bottom line. That is at the heart of everything I teach. I want people to feel in control. I want people to feel like they can rely on themselves. Like, the perfect candidate to come and really get help from Self Made You is that person that believes that they need help, that they need outside resources. I I can help you, of course, but I don't want you to think that you have found the silver bullet or that you found the
Mm.
easy button, because
Like, you need it, yeah.
it's you that is making
Mhm.
this decision to bring on board resources that will, of course, very likely they're going to
Mhm.
help evolve your life or your situation. But at the end of the day, you got to give credit to yourself for making the decision, right? Like, so many people
Mhm.
give credit, and opposite of that, they point the finger and they place blame on all the things
Yeah.
outside of them. I really put most of my effort in teaching people how to take responsibility for all of their unintentional and intentional results, for all of their decisions. Like, own it. And
Yeah.
that will change your life. And so that's what we teach. We teach a framework from which to think, and it has unlimited applications. And we use the acronym SELF. So you're learning
Mm.
how to rely and trust yourself every single day, day after day. You apply this in unlimited ways. I don't care if it's, you know, which kind of coffee am I going to brew this morning? It's applicable. Versus, who am I going to marry, or what's going to be the next career move? It's
Mhm.
applicable in that way too, right? Like, this is the, like, example or application of learning to trust yourself. So it's The S
Yeah.
is start with a decision. What is it that you want and why do you want it? You got to ask yourself that question. No matter where you find yourself, there's always a decision to be made to put you in the driver's seat. What is it that you want and why do you want it? The E is eliminate self sabotage. Exactly what you said earlier, Thomas. Do you consider that to be self sabotage? Yes, I do. If you do not have the awareness, if you're not operating from the part of your brain that keeps you responding versus reacting, you will sabotage what it is that you want. So you start with a decision, what is it that you want and why do you want it? And secondly, we proactively eliminate the self-sabotage because by default, that's
Yeah.
what our primitive brain is designed to do. It's meant to keep you safe, and it does it in a very
Mm.
dramatic, fear-based way. It offers you all sorts of fear-based thoughts that we don't ever question, and we just believe,
Well,
and then we react from it, and then we sabotage ourselves.
oh no, I was gonna say something about self-sabotage where it's kind of like a cycle. It's like you may be doing it subconsciously, unconsciously, whatever. But you fall into this like self-sabotage cycle where whether you do it consciously or not, it's kind of like you're creating these problems that lead to your excuses for the reason why you're not doing the thing that you want to do.
Mhm.
And that's the cycle. It's like, well, I overate, so now I feel like crap and I just want to lay down. So now I can't do the thing the thing that I want to do,
Right,
and it just becomes like a cycle of excuses and self-sabotaging and
right,
creating reasons why you're not doing it instead of reasons why you can do it.
right. It would be the equivalent of getting a flat tire, and instead of getting out of your car and changing the flat tire, you run around and slash the other three tires. That's what self-sabotage is. It's how you're going to think about the circumstance. Oh, I've got a flat tire. I'm either going to get out of my
Mhm.
car and fix it, or you think the whole world has come to an end and you run around the car and slash the other three tires. That's
Mhm.
self-sabotage, right? So it's deciding how you're going to think about a circumstance. Just because you got a flat tire is it's not the end of the world. You can choose to believe I have the tools. I know how to fix a flat tire. I mean, I really don't know how to fix a flat tire, but I have a
Me
phone
either.
and I know how to call somebody that can come fix my flat tire, right? So that's how I choose to think. But I will say
Mhm.
for all of you who are like, oh yeah, I think that getting a flat tire is like the end
The
all
end
be
of the
all,
world. Yeah.
right? Like I used to be that person. And it's only through learning how to think differently that I have really built up the part of my brain that questions that fear based thinking. So I always teach a little bit of neuroscience when I'm on a podcast. If you kind of think of that 3 pound organ that exists between your ears, if you were to cut it in half, the left side is what I call your primitive brain. It's
Mm.
really the part of your brain that's meant to keep you alive. It's just the survival part of your brain. And it offers you a lot of dramatic fear based thoughts in an attempt to keep you alive. But the
Mm.
truth of the matter is, we're not in a lot of danger. So it is helpful when you're in danger to have those fear based thoughts, but we're not
Mhm.
often in danger and we're still hearing those fear based thoughts and we believe them. We don't question them. And when you believe them, you react. You have these knee jerk reactions like eating the cookie when you're on a diet, right? Or yelling at your partner when you're actually trying to connect, right?
Mhm.
Because they didn't do something that you wanted them to do. That's a knee jerk reaction. So if we
Mhm.
listen to the primitive brain, it often doesn't end well. So I teach my clients how to operate from the other half of their brain that I call your prodigy brain. It's the more extraordinary part of your brain. It's the part of the brain that actually doesn't get used as much By default, we operate from the primitive part. So that is the
Mm-hmm.
stronger part. We want to kind of engage in almost like a mental fitness activity on the regular so that we strengthen that prodigy part of our brain. So that becomes the
Mm-hmm.
brain that is, at the front of the line when we need it. And so that part of your brain allows you to tap into empathy and compassion and
Mm-hmm.
innovation and creativity, right? You have no access to those kind of strengths when you're operating from your primitive brain, the fear based brain, right?
So you had start with a decision, eliminate self-sabotage.
The,
What's the L and F?
the L is leverage your prodigy brain strengths. So there's
Mm-hmm.
5 of them that you can tap into. And you, by default, are operating from your prodigy brain when you are actually aware of a feeling. So, the simplest way to get into your prodigy brain is to ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? And really like discover what the emotion, what the vibration actually is that's going through your body. So, really being intentional,
Mm-hmm.
really being present. When you can check those boxes, you are operating from your prodigy brain. And now I want you to leverage the strengths that are available to you when you are there. It's almost like, okay, I have some awareness, I'm knocking on the door.
Mm-hmm.
I can open up the door and now I have this huge buffet available to me because I'm here. I'm here. I'm in the house that has all of the goodness available to me. So, just simply through awareness of what it is that you're feeling, you are being intentional and you are operating from your prodigy brain. And now you can access empathy, discovery, innovation. You can navigate utilizing your values. Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
So many people have values, but they don't ever use them to like move forward in their life. They're not at the forefront. They're not
Mm-hmm.
they're not referencing or accessing what are my values? How do I want to move forward using those? And then also really aligning with your inner being. Some people like to call it your source. Some people call it God. Some people call it the universe. But really having that ability to align with the higher being, um, that is accessible to you when you're operating from your prodigy brain. When you're operating
Mm-hmm.
from your primitive brain, that is nowhere in sight, right? You are not thinking in a way that allows you to align with your source. So, those 5 strengths are available to you and available to leverage when you're operating from your prodigy brain. So that's the L. So start with a decision, eliminate the self sabotage, leverage the prodigy brain strengths, and then finally you finish with a decision. So step 1 and 4 are the exact same. It doesn't really get any easier than that. But that final decision,
Mm-hmm.
the question to be asking yourself is what's the next step I can take that is so easy, it's hard not to do? What's the next step
Mm-hmm.
I can take that's so easy, so easy that it's hard not to do? That is a profound question to be asking yourself because most people, if they haven't done the 3 steps ahead of that,
Mm-hmm.
they will default into just massive, 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 massive action. What can I do right now that will take me from 0 to 60? And they'll sabotage themselves. I'm saying, what can you do? What kind of step, incremental step can you take that is so simple? It's so small that it's so easy. It's actually hard not to do. That's the
No, I love that because that reminds me of Atomic Habits,
Mhm.
where he speaks of exactly that. Like when you're starting a new habit, start very small on the smallest step you can possibly think of,
Yeah,
related to that habit. And the most common example is like if you want to start exercising or something, set your shoes out or
right.
something. Like you don't have to. uh physically go work out, but you can set your shoes up
Yep.
or something
It's
like
a great
that.
example. It's a great example. I always give
Yeah.
my clients the example of if you want to spend 30 minutes on the treadmill, day one, all you got to do is get yourself to the treadmill. Let's just touch the treadmill. Maybe we just turn it on and then we turn it back off. That's the win. That's so easy. It's actually hard not to do. Like, so easy, right? Now, the next day, what's the compounded step that's so easy? It's hard not to do. And so,
Mm,
very incremental steps, but they are steps that are leading you to where it is that you want to be nonetheless. And that's important because that is progress. But if you
mm,
go 0 to 60, you might make some progress for a small amount of time, but it's not sustainable. You
mm,
haven't done the work to set yourself up for success. You haven't started with a decision. You haven't eliminated the self sabotage. You haven't leveraged the prodigy brain strengths. All you did was engaged in an action.
mm,
It's not going to get you what it is that you want in any sort of satisfying or sustainable way. It just won't.
mm. So you have a story about weight loss. Can you tell me that story?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's like a never ending story. I can tell you
What?
that.
Oh, never ending.
Yeah. I mean, my story probably sounds very familiar to a lot of people's stories,
Mm,
where I grew up in a family that, I was a latchkey kid, or I spent a lot of time by
mm.
myself because my parents were divorced when I was younger. My dad didn't live with us. My mom had to spend a lot of time outside of the home working. And so I would come home from school and I was dealing with a lot of abandonment issues. I was
Mm,
dealing with a lot of unworthiness issues. And as a 10 or an 11-year-old, I didn't have a clue how to deal with that. And so food became my friend. Food became the way that I would soothe myself. And it worked. So I look back on that and I'm like, all of that led me to where I'm at today. So even though for years I used to beat myself up over being an overweight child and then an overweight young adult and then an overweight, adult, I used to
mm,
think that I was so broken and so unworthy. And actually, all of those experiences led me to where I'm at today. I have so much compassion for people who just never were taught how to think about their circumstances, about their situations. So at 10 and 11 years old, I thought I was broken. I thought that I couldn't ever stand to feel lonely, to feel sad. So instead, I would turn to ice cream and just try to numb all of those feelings because it
mm,
never occurred to me that I actually had the ability to feel sad because I should have felt sad. It was super sad.
mhm,
But I didn't know that that was something that I should be feeling and just allow it to be there. I would turn to things that would just numb it. So as a
mm.
child, it was all of the easy things to come by, all of the fast
Cookies.
food and the candy and the cookies and the ice cream, right? And so, those loaded with sugar and flour, which arguably are very addictive. They can be just as addictive as alcohol and drugs.
Mm,
And so I got addicted to sugar and flour and processed foods at a very young age. And so it makes perfect sense. Today, as a 51-year-old woman, I can look back at that and I can have a ton of empathy and compassion and I can make sense of it all. Um, so I don't really make it mean anything anymore about my worth. Like it makes sense. So because I was addicted, I carried those habits into my adult years. And I had all sorts of experiences with like easy button diets, right?
mm,
Whatever the trend was, because again, I didn't know how to think of myself as the solution, the SELF and myself. I never thought of myself as the solution. I thought I was the common denominator to all my problems. So, of course, I was looking for all of the easy button, all of the silver bullets. I was the first one there to dole out the money to every diet trend that would
The
show up on the
fads,
market.
yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't think I was going to be able to solve it. I figured the solution existed outside of myself. So I spent tons of money and tons of time just following people's actions that they would tell me, here's the list, go buy these foods, eat this food. But nobody teaches you how to think about nutrition and diet.
Wait,
And
so were you doing the
what's that?
the I guess were you doing like the work of the fad diets, and did they have any progress?
Yeah, yes, they did. Like, I did all of the diets and they had temporary results,
Mm.
right? So then I was the typical yo-yo dieter, right? I would lose
Uh,
all the weight and ironically, like I was a cheerleader in college, so I had to keep
mm,
weight off for a certain amount of time. The minute I was like not a cheerleader anymore, I put back on the weight and then I got married. And I mean, my wedding pictures, you wouldn't even recognize me. I was so overweight. And then I ended up having children and I was super heavy as I was carrying children. And
that's an excuse. That's a common excuse.
totally, totally.
Um, mothers use. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, I still have my pregnant weight like
yeah.
5 years later.
Or yeah, I'm eating for two, right? Like, yeah. Oh yeah, I bought into all that. So, I mean, my story of weight loss is so similar to everybody else's story. That's why I say, like, I really want to make an impact by teaching people how to think differently because it has nothing to do with the actions. I don't care what your problem is. Your problem is not the alcohol. Your problem is not the food. Your problem is not the dollar amount in your bank account. Your problem is not the job title you have or the partner who maybe is unsupportive. That is not the problem. The
What
problem is
about
you've
what
never
about
been taught
traumas?
how to think. You've never been taught how to think about those things. So that's what I do. I teach people how to think. So I taught myself how to think differently about my weight, and lo and behold, food is no longer a problem. I also struggled with alcohol. And
Mm.
the minute I started thinking differently about alcohol, it was no longer a problem. And I will tell you what, Thomas, that is the thing that I stand here today swearing to you. I never thought I would be able to get over that addiction. I was so in the throes of feeling like I needed a glass of wine every single night to take the edge off. I couldn't imagine my life without it. And here I am, 2 years, 100% sober. I hardly ever think about alcohol. It's not what I used to, it's not at all what I used to think it was. But again,
Mm.
I've learned to think differently. It's not because I don't buy it. We still have plenty of it on the shelves in our house. It's not because I don't like the taste of it. I I think the taste of it is fine. It's because I think differently about it. I don't believe I need it anymore.
Mm.
If I wanted it, it's widely available. I can have it. I just don't
So
need
what
it like
is
I thought I did.
what is the process, I guess, and how to think differently?
It is 100% learning how to rely on yourself.
Mm.
SLF. Start with a decision. What is it that you want? I want to no longer rely on alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
take the edge off. Okay, why do you want that? I mean, these are the questions you've got to ask yourself. So you can follow the framework, SELF, but you
Mm-hmm.
got to ask yourself the question and you've got to answer the question. So a lot of people will try
Mm.
to hack the system by telling me, I asked myself the question. I'm like, good. What was the answer? You have to answer it. You've got to answer the question. So, what is it that I want? I don't want to rely on alcohol to take the stress off anymore. Okay. Why do you want it? Well, because I want to live longer. I want to reduce my risk of chronic illness. I want to remember.
Wake up with a hangover every day.
I don't want to wake up with a hangover every day, right? So you have to answer those two questions. What is it that you want and why do you want it? That second question is really important because it really convicts you, right? It
Mm.
it clearly makes the reasons for making the decision like it makes them they're good reasons. They're reasons that you like. It's not because somebody told you to.
It's
It's
like more aligned with who you are.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you have to answer that question. And then eliminating the self-sabotage. We all are prone to hearing certain narratives.
Mm.
And it definitely stems back to our childhood. It stems back to some of our greatest strengths, which I think is fascinating. It will stem back to some of the messaging that we've been exposed to. But a lot of people, those saboteur narratives are people pleasing narratives, or they're judgmental
Mm.
narratives where you are judging other people, or you're judging yourself, or you're judging circumstances, and you're feeling guilt and regret and shame and disappointment. But there's 10 very universal narratives that we give a free assessment, a saboteur assessment, that clearly shows you which ones you're most prone to hearing. So there's the people
Mm.
pleaser, there's the victim, there's the hyper vigilant, there's the controller, the hyper rational, the hyper achiever. So it's really
Mm.
helpful to take that assessment because now you kind of know what you're looking for, right? You're like, oh yeah,
Mm.
I think like that, or I feel
Mm.
guilt, shame, regret all the time. So taking the assessment isn't the antidote, but taking the assessment shows you what to be on the lookout for so that you don't react to those thoughts. You instead
Mm.
respond to those thoughts and you question those thoughts. That's how you eliminate the self sabotage. So you can kind of hack it by taking the assessment so you know what it is that you're looking for. Like
Mm.
you're on the lookout for it, right? And then you can question the thought when it shows up. Doing that puts you in your prodigy brain. You're like knocking on the door of the prodigy brain. Now you can leverage those strengths, empathy and discovery and innovation. You can start asking yourself questions like, what are all the factors that I might not be seeing? That's
Mm.
discovery. That's how you can tap into a strength that is not available to you when you're operating from your fear based brain. You can tap into innovation where you're really looking at new alternatives. Again, you can navigate from what's truly important to you, from your like deepest wisdom and your values. You can align with your future self. Like, what does my future self know about this circumstance, this point in
Mm.
time in my life? What is my future self telling me about that? Tap into the wisdom of your source. Maybe you have a very strong faith with the higher
Mm.
being. You ask for wisdom, right? So that
Mhm.
all of those kind of strengths you can tap into by leveraging your prodigy brain. And then those three steps have now just set you up so well to take one little tiny step in the right direction. And then you just ask yourself, what's the next step I can take that's so easy it's hard not to do? And maybe in this case, it's telling someone, you know what?
Mm.
I don't want to drink alcohol anymore. And maybe I just decline the next happy hour invitation. Maybe that's an easy step. And maybe that's not so easy, right? And so maybe there's an easier step you can take. But when you're in that place of innovation, when you are tapped into your prodigy brain, you are so much more likely to take a very simple next step. You're going to be able to
Mm.
come up with that next step so much easier. But you've got to do steps 1 through 3 to get yourself there. And again, the fatal flaw of everyone is when they just jump to the action. And you see it
Yeah.
all day, every day. Everybody is all about massive actioning their way to what it is that they want without setting themselves up for success by asking themselves, what is it that I want? Why do I want it? Eliminating the self sabotage, leveraging those prodigy brain strengths. That gets you to the place where now you can take action. And now those incremental steps, before you know it, you're there and you are loving the journey. It becomes no longer about the finish line, it's all about the journey. Everything becomes very satisfying because you've taken those three steps.
100%. Yeah, it sounds like what you're explaining is basically a process to slow down, like kind of like we live in this fast-paced world or um, reaction world, and the way you're describing it, it sounds like you're basically taking like you're putting like a brick in or like a wall in front of you where you're like kind of like forced to, or a mirror in front of you where you're like kind of forced to look at yourself and reflect
Mm-hmm.
and snap out of it and get aware. It sounds like that prodigy brain is awareness, I guess. It's like
Mm-hmm.
when you
Yeah.
become more self-aware and you realize that your actions and everything you do can impact the world in small or big way, and start taking responsibility for those actions and accountability in yourself. That's when you can, I guess, take that first step.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. You're exactly right. And slowing down, I think, is part of it. I would say a bigger part is really learning to trust yourself. I just think that that
Mm,
is something that is overlooked in the context of priorities, in the context of importance. So many of us have never been taught how to trust ourselves. And so, how do you do that? You use the self framework, you use that acronym. That's
yeah.
all you have to remember. Start with a decision, eliminate the self sabotage, leverage those prodigy brain strengths, and finish with a decision. That's how you do it. And it's just a cycle. And you use it all day, every day. And does it get exhausting? Yeah, it does. I'll be honest with you. It can be mentally taxing because your prodigy brain is not the stronger part of your brain. The primitive brain is the stronger part. So, but as
Mm,
you kind of engage in what I like to call like this mental fitness routine, it
yeah.
does strengthen it and it does become easier. So, it's a choice. It's a choice. It's not an easy button. It's not a silver bullet. But if you want to learn how to rely on yourself, you'll do it because it's transformative.
I think that's the problem with trusting ourselves
Mhm.
is having that, I guess, intuition and discipline and holding ourselves accountable. I think that's why we lose trust in ourselves and
Yeah, and I
we
think
choose
we
the easy.
yeah.
Yeah, we choose the easy path.
Yeah, our primitive brain, that part of your brain that's the strongest part, it wants to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and it wants to be efficient. So, in its attempt to keep you alive, because it is the survival part of your brain, it does those three things: seeks pleasure, avoids pain at all costs, and it wants to be efficient. It's not going to do the things that it thinks is hard. It's going to always look for the easy button. And it always tries to keep you safe with very dramatic narratives. So when you
Mm,
know that about your primitive brain, you can start calling it out. Like we have a lot of fun with it. We're really playful. Like when my primitive brain tries to tell me that I'm not enough or what I did yesterday was not enough, I'm like, says the judge, says that nasty primitive brain. It's not true, but I'm just believing it. Most of the time, I don't even
yeah.
call it out. I just unintentionally believe it. And then I keep going about my day. And when I believe that,
Mm,
my day unfolds in a way that, it's not the ideal day. So we teach people literally this application in the context of a day. So we have a day planner that
okay.
we
Yeah.
sell on Amazon, and it's called the Self self-made day planner. That's what we sell
Oh,
on
nice.
Amazon. Anybody can buy it, and you can take a little tutorial that shows you the components of the planner, and all you're doing is trusting yourself to make decisions ahead of time about every hour of your day. And when you start to
Mm,
trust and rely on yourself, you have all sorts of confidence, and you start creating a self-made life. You start creating, like, you become a self-made person by using this framework in the context of your day. So we have the day planner is just like any other day planner in the context of we break it out by the half an hour starting at 7
yeah.
a.m. But we teach you how to make decisions ahead of time, asking yourself, like, how do I want to feel at 7 a.m. when I'm out walking the dog?
Mm-hmm.
What would I have to be believing in order to feel that way? Now, now we're talking about a revolutionary type day planner. This is the day planner
Mm,
that truly creates self-made days, because you decide ahead of time not only where you're going to be, what you're going to say yes and no to, you're deciding how you want to feel and what you'd have to be thinking, what you believe in order to feel that way. So it's the same
yeah.
concept that we're
It's like
talking about, but
setting up.
applied to your day.
Yeah, it's like setting up your intentions, kind of.
True,
What do
but also
you?
taking it to the next
Yeah.
step. How do you intend to feel? How do you intend to think? Like, those are questions nobody asks themselves at around, what they're going to be doing at 7 a.m. And I don't really care, again, if you're making a cup of coffee or you're meeting with the president of the United States. Doesn't matter. You still should be asking yourself ahead of time, how do I want to feel? And what do I need to
Mm,
be believing to feel that way? It's super important, because that's how you create, nobody else is creating, you create the day that you want to be living. And when you start compounding day after day after day, before you know it, you're living the life that you have created, not that has been doled out to you. It's the life that you have decided you want to create through making decisions ahead of time, not only about what it is that you're doing, it's about how it is that you want to be feeling and what thoughts are going to create that feeling. That's
what
what
if
creates a
you?
self-made day. And that's what students who come to self-made you learn to do.
What if you don't want to do anything one day? What if you just want to
I
chill
say, good
out?
on you, and you better like your reasons for not wanting to do anything. Truly, truly, Thomas, I would
Okay.
say, like your reasons for making that decision. I don't want to do anything. I mean, I would
Mm.
argue you're doing something. It's just how do you define it? Like, I know when I
Yeah.
say I'm not going to do anything today,
Yeah.
that's like Netflix, right? That's Netflix and slippers, feet up on the ottoman with a remote
Yeah.
control in my hand. But reasonably, I'm actually doing something, right? I am actually doing something. And I just would
Yeah.
ask you to clarify, do you like your reasons for making that decision? It's still a decision. So give yourself
Mhm.
credit for it. Most people are like undermining their decisions. I just went through this with a client today. She's like, so you're saying that pouring a cup of coffee is part of my morning routine, because that's what we're working on right now, is creating, we have a program, it's called Morning Mastery. And it mark my words, Thomas, this will be like the next big program. So we're teaching people how to create an amazing morning routine that really springboards them into a day that is full of accomplishment and inspiration and things that they want, productivity. But it starts with a morning routine. And so we were talking about the fact that she has a morning routine of pouring a cup of coffee and talking to her son as he drives to work. That's part of her morning routine. But she thought that
Oh,
that was so
yeah.
insignificant that she didn't even think about it as a morning routine. And it's not the actions that
Mm,
she's taking that, she wanted my, like, permission almost to be able to call that her morning routine. I don't care what your morning routine is. What I care about is how you think about it. If you think about
mm,
pouring a cup of coffee and talking to your son on the phone as he drives to work as a great morning routine that is full of self-care and all the things that I want from my morning, perfect. That's amazing because that makes you feel
Mm,
good. I want people to feel good. So I don't really care what the actions are because you are going to think one way or another about them. That's what I care about. And if you don't like the actions that you're taking in the morning, then I'll help you like iterate that until we land upon something that you think is like appropriate and worthy and that it's working for you because I know that that's going to make you feel good. And when you feel good, your day unfolds in an entirely different way. Does that make sense?
no, yeah, yeah. That makes perfect sense. I think what you're getting at is basically we all have a choice that we get to assign a certain meaning to the task that we're doing every day.
Uh-huh.
So if you
Uh-huh.
walk your dog, but you hate walking your dog, you're choosing to feel that hatred of walking your dog. Or
Only
you can
because of the way
choose,
you're unintentionally or intentionally thinking. So if you don't want to hate
yeah,
that action, then we need to recognize what are we thinking that's creating the hate, right? That's
hmm
and so it's again, it's something that nobody is taught in school. Our teachers have spent a lot of time teaching us what to think. They never taught us how to think. They've never taught us to rely on ourselves to think in a way that actually creates days and life that we actually love. We always feel like we're behind the eight ball because we don't know enough. Not true. Not true. You've just never been taught how to think to where you do feel like it's enough.
What about people caught in the comparison trap?
It's a saboteur narrative. The
Sabotage.
Yep. So remember how I was talking earlier about the 10 most universal um,
hmm
saboteur narratives? So a lot of
Yeah.
people get caught into this like hyperachiever type narrative where
hmm
they think their worth is dependent on constant performance and achievement. They think
Mm,
that, in order to have self respect or self validation, they have to perform at like the most perfect level. And they
hmm
also are very focused on external validation. Um,
hmm
it really leads to like kind of workaholic type tendencies. They lose touch
Yeah.
kind of their relationship needs. They will find themselves comparing themselves to other people. They often feel depressed, they feel empty, they feel unworthy. So if you score high, you now know, okay, that's the narrative. It's like I can't be satisfied with anything less than perfect. If I don't succeed, I'm a
hmm
failure. I have to be the best, right? Those are the kinds of thoughts that you would be on the lookout for if you score high in the assessment for hyperachiever. So, those people who are, routinely comparing themselves against other
hmm
people, um, it's a saboteur narrative. It's coming from your primitive brain that's offering you these BS thoughts. They're not true, but you're not questioning them. You're believing them. You're
mm
reacting from them, which is coming from your primitive brain. I want you to notice the thought or notice the depression or the loneliness that you start to feel and let that be the tripwire that has you questioning that thought. Even that, just the simple awareness of that feeling now has you operating from your prefrontal cortex, which is the technical term for your prodigy brain, right? So
Yeah.
now you can tap into empathy and discovery. So it takes you being aware. And so there is a learning curve to this. There absolutely is. This is, like I said,
Yeah.
it's not an easy button. There is a learning curve. To be aware takes intention. It does.
Well, something I do, because I think no matter who you are, you could be the most successful, well put together person. I think you're gonna inevitably have doubtful thoughts or existential thoughts about what you're doing and why you're doing it. I think for me, I always question it, like you were saying, like question those thoughts. I always tell myself, if I can think this, I could think the opposite. Like if I
Hmm.
could think I can't do it, well, I also can do it. If I could think, I always think like whenever I catch myself in those like, man, how am I gonna achieve this, or how am I gonna get this done, or whatever, I always think the opposite of that. That's
Yeah.
my practice.
Brilliant. I love it. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's just as easy to choose to think the alternative. It's just as easy. But
Yeah.
most of us have not been taught to catch it in order to make the choice, right? You have
Mm.
like created that habit. It's taken practice. You've had to have a lot of at bats to be able to apply that. You're a great example.
Yeah.
And so now you routinely, because your prodigy brain is more aware of those saboteur type narratives, those sabotaging type thoughts, that you have that as the tripwire. It's either the thought or the feeling that's probably triggering you to
Mhm.
remind yourself, oh, wait, I can actually think the alternative. Just as easily as I can think this, I can think that, right?
Yeah,
The only
exactly.
reason why you do
Yeah.
that is because you've practiced that. That's what I mean when I say there's a
Mm.
learning curve to this, but it's well worth it. I'm sure that has served you very well.
No, I mean, I wouldn't be doing this if if I fell
Right,
into the trap of that. So,
right, right. Yeah,
and that's why you could catch it, like you were saying, you could have fun with it. Like, wait a minute, I'm not letting you
right.
get the
Yeah,
best of
yeah,
me.
yeah. I love
What do
being
you
playful about this. Yeah.
yeah, what are some of your like daily practices that keep you level-headed in your ambitious goal?
Well, not to be super self-serving, but because I love the word self, I'm going to. This is
Yeah.
my like I do not make a move before I do my day planner every single day. It grounds me. It
Mhm.
really puts me in the driver's seat. I better understand myself because it actually the questions that I've been saying to you, like, that would come from your prodigy brain, they're actually in writing. So it becomes like a journal. So the prompts are there.
Mm.
So, of course I wake up a little bit tired. I'm not firing on all cylinders. So I like to be prompt. And so I literally understand myself every single morning by following and journaling via the prompts. So that's really helpful. That is a non negotiable. I give all of the credit to so many of my successful days because I start my day in that way. So
Mhm.
that's first and foremost. I do think that moving your body is really helpful. And I like to kind of stack habits. So as I'm on the treadmill, I
Yeah.
always am listening to a podcast. I love
Oh, I
podcasts.
do
And
the same
so,
thing, yeah.
yeah. And I do think that when you're moving your body, you're more likely, the blood is flowing, you're more likely to like retain what it is that you're hearing.
Mm.
Um, and you're probably thinking of ways that you can apply what it is that you're learning, so it becomes almost an applied learning experience, which is one of the best ways. Research has proven that that's one applied learning is one of the best ways to learn. So I like to do that. So I like moving my body, listening to a podcast. I love spending time with my dog with a cup of coffee in my hand. So I like always, I'm setting myself up for success. I get those like endorphin
You feel
hits.
good, yeah.
Yeah, the oxytocin, all the hormones, the good feeling hormones. I know the things to do to create that. So why wouldn't you do
Mm-hmm.
that? Like, right? Like, I'm not in the business of making myself suffer. Like, I'm in the business of enjoying this one life I actually have and really
Mm-hmm.
maximizing every day. So I do the things that I know feel good, right? So um
Mm.
that's that's how my morning starts. Usually I am, sitting here and working by 9 o'clock. And, obviously I've changed careers so that I'm doing something that I love that is very fulfilling all day long. And I'm using my brain, and often I'm engaged in very emotional conversations. So it can be taxing. So I make sure that I also get enough sleep. I am someone that loves to track data. So I wear like an Aura
You have a
ring.
Whoop?
I don't
Oh
I don't
no.
have a Whoop. I have the Aura ring. I also wear a CGM, so I'm monitoring my glucose levels.
Yeah.
I teach my clients. We have a weight loss program at Self-Made You, and so we teach our clients how to track data so that they're not relying
Yeah.
on the dramatic thoughts and taking action from drama. They're actually collecting data. So we teach them how to collect data in a very effective, efficient way. I love doing that kind
Mm-hmm.
of stuff. Um, so yeah, I love to read, and so I'm always like reading blogs, and I have my favorites. And so I really have curated a day that I sometimes have to pinch myself. Like, I don't like what I'm doing doesn't really feel like work, but on Mondays, I
Mm.
have a group coaching call at noon. On Wednesdays, I have a group coaching call at 9. And on Fridays, I have a group coaching call at 9. And I sprinkle in some one on one calls in between. And outside of that, I am doing things I love that feels good. I am connecting with people. I love to play pickleball. So I go play pickleball. I mean, I've curated the life I want. And why wouldn't I? Like, everybody should do that,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, those
Yeah.
are some of the thoughts that I live by, that, you know, I deserve it, and it's really in my own hands to orchestrate, what it is that I have learned I love.
So what are your thoughts on like burnout?
Burnout, um, I think it is worth examining, like, what is the actual feeling that you're experiencing? What's triggering that? What thoughts are you having that's making you feel that way? Are these thoughts, um, are they like static thoughts? Is it a chronic way of thinking? Is there another way that you could be thinking about the circumstance, whether you're burnt out in a relationship or you're burnt out in a career? Um, I think that change is a good thing, but I also caution people to not jump to change. I would,
Mm.
if I had a client that came to me and said, I'm completely burnt out in my career and I want to find a new job,
Mm-hmm.
my advice to them would be, how about we learn to love this job and then find the next career? Because leaving a career in a completed state, feeling like it's complete, and you are focused on all the things that you did love about it, is a great way to draw any sort of relationship to a conclusion, versus
Mm.
leaving with a ton of resentment and burnout and stress and all the ick feelings. Like, why do that? And I know how to navigate that. It doesn't have to take a long time. Like, I'm not saying, oh, no, 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 you're going to sit here for another 6 months while you learn to love it. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. So I think, you know, burnout is legit. I think we just need to recognize what's actually causing it and
Mm.
tackle that, not jump to, actions as a solution.
Yeah, like not be like impulsive about it too much.
Right. Right.
I guess before we lead into the closing segment, I had one more question for you.
Okay.
If you were in charge of the education system, what's one thing you'd change?
Oh my gosh. Uh, I would incorporate and put a high level of importance on teaching children how to trust themselves. 100%. I think that, there obviously is core curriculum out there that most systems have adopted, reading, writing. um, I think
Yeah.
that they are overlooking like this critical thinking, the ability to, teaching kids how to think
Hmm.
critically, how, having more cognitive awareness, recognizing, like understanding the neuroscience. It's fascinating. Like we teach them all about, how the body functions, but we kind of skip the applied learning of their own brain in a like applied
Like
environment.
psychology of it. Yeah.
Totally.
Kind
I
of.
mean, I was a psych major and I still didn't get any of that education. Like, it's crazy to me. So, I do a lot of public speaking at schools, and the younger I can get my audience, the better, because I do think
Hmm.
they all have the ability to understand. And I think it's all about the delivery. So, I put that responsibility on myself on how do you deliver it to your target audience. And I think that there's always a way. And it's meaningful to me to equip children at a younger age because they get to live a longer life feeling in control. They get to live a longer life
Yeah.
trusting themselves, really basking in confidence versus, following some script in a blind sort of way, feeling maybe like they're doing things against their will, but they just have to. Like, that's no good. That really does create a lot of resentment. And, I think it also creates a lot of finger pointing and a lot of blame. And we see that in today's society. So
Hmm.
that's, I mean, no doubt about it. That's how I would change the educational system.
You would, I guess, if anybody's listening to this, she wants the her program integrated in the entire education system.
Wouldn't that be amazing? It would be so
Self-made
amazing.
you,
Yep.
government backed.
Yep. Yep. Let's go. Let's go.
You ready to play this game?
You bet. Bring it on.
All right. Here's the first card and the second card. Completely random.
Okay.
Can you read this for me?
Share something that changed your worldview. Well, I would
Well, it
say,
goes together. It goes together, yeah.
oh, share something that
DC.
changed your worldview. My relationship to my body is.
Oh wow,
Okay.
that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Um, so changed my worldview because of the relationship that I have with my body. Is that how I should interpret that?
Yeah, it's like kind of like share something that changed your worldview about your relationship with your body,
Um, I
or
guess
how
what,
your relationship with your body has changed your worldview, vice versa.
yeah. You know, I, so one of the things that I tell some of my weight loss clients, who believe that they need to lose weight, that there's this ideal number, right? They put so much like emphasis on the number on the scale. And I used to do that too. Like it got so bad that I'd go donate blood before I'd have to weigh in because I knew,
No way. Really?
yeah, that's how cray cray I got about my weight. And so, yeah,
No way. That's
because of
crazy.
course I was like lifetime member of Weight Watchers. So the day that I would have to go weigh in to keep my lifetime membership status, I would also very strategically go donate blood because I would do anything that I could to keep that
Lose like
number
an extra
lower.
pound or something.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, it's so silly, but I laugh at that now, and I put such an emphasis on what that number on the scale said. And
Mm-hmm.
now I think about my body not as a number at all. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't really care what the number says anymore. Now I think about my body and all of the things that it does for me. And honestly, one of the
Mm.
things that dramatically changed my view on that was when my dad died at the age of 60. He died from esophageal cancer, and he had to have a surgery that removed a huge portion of his intestine, and it went all the way up to his esophagus. And the surgery was kin to gastric bypass, which we all
Mm-hmm.
know is a weight loss surgery. So he did that as a life-saving measure, but it wasn't long, it wasn't long lived. He only probably got
Yeah.
an extra maybe year from that surgery.
Mm.
And the reason why that surgery prolonged his life by a year was because he was a bigger man to start. He had a lot of body fat. He was muscular, just a big built man. Had he not been like that, that surgery wouldn't even have been an option for him because he wasn't big enough to sustain the kind of weight loss that that surgery creates. So I think about that all the
Uh,
time. I think about how fortunate I am to have this body in the container that it's in. Like it's done some amazing things for me. Like I've been able to birth two children, and God forbid I get that diagnosis, I would be able to sustain. Like I'm not this whiff of a woman like that, doesn't have enough body fat to spare. I do. And you know what? That's how I think about my body now. So my view has changed greatly on body image, and I think about what my body can do for me, and not I never think about my body as a number on a scale anymore. And I have a lot of compassion for people who do. And I know that people are
mm.
suffering so much. I mean, we're exposed to so many messages about the scale and the size and all of that, especially now. Like, there's all these weight loss drugs that, pharmaceuticals are putting tons of money behind Ozempic and all of the injectables. And again, I do believe that it's your personal choice whether or not you want to lose weight, but I would say you have to examine your reasons, and you have to make sure you like those reasons, truly like those reasons. Don't just take the off the shelf reasons that somebody else has given you.
Mm-hmm.
Really, like, investigate whether those are meaningful reasons to you, because that's my view now is all about, like, what are the benefits of having this
Mm-hmm.
body, of having the extra weight on this body? There's benefits, but if you don't ask yourself the question, you're never going to have that perspective. And so I guess that's the
No,
best
I,
way I can
I,
answer that
no,
question.
I actually had a guest on that struggled with weight loss and body image, and she said one of the reasons that she stayed overweight, fat, whatever for so many years was because she could give big cuddly hugs.
Yeah, and that's meaningful to her, right? Yeah, that's cool.
But she eventually, like, she's at a healthy weight now and she looks good. But
Amazing. That's awesome.
I agree. So my final questions. First question: what's your biggest regret?
My biggest regret. God, honestly, I don't know if anything really comes to mind. I have a little bit of stage fright type, anxiety. And so that stage fright has kept me from reaching out, being on the bigger platforms and things like that. So I can think of some opportunities that I didn't take because
because
of
of
that
that.
fear. Yeah. So I would say,
I
some
think
of
that's
those.
common though.
Oh gosh.
It's kind of
Yeah.
common, yeah.
Yeah. And doing things like this, I probably am on 1 to 2 podcasts a week. And so it's really having the at bats that have really created more of a comfort level. Now I have so much evidence for, believing that I'm highly capable of being on the big stages.
Yeah.
I might not necessarily want to be on the big stages, but it depends on, who's it for and why. Like again, if it's for the community, if it's for the younger kids, where I really believe I'm going to make a significant impact, I'll do it, even if I'm nervous. But
Well,
yeah.
no, I feel the same way. Like I get nervous if I ever have to publicly speak. And I did like a month of, I don't know if you heard of Toastmasters.
Uh-huh.
It's like a
Yeah.
public speaking get together thing. I did like a month of that, and after the month, I had a mindset shift of like whenever I'm in front of people and I have something to say, I'm gonna say it, and it's not about me and the attention, all eyes on me, whatever. It's not about me, it's about the information that I'm giving them. The
Hmm.
attention is on the information that I'm speaking, not so much all the eyes on me. And that
Right.
that
That's
that's a mindset
so
shift
smart.
that's helped me.
So smart. I love that. Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So next question, who or what has made the biggest impact in your life that makes you who you are?
Whew. Um, you know, I do read a lot. There's quite a few influences in my life. Dr. Benjamin Hardy is definitely one of them. He is an organizational psychologist. He's written books like The Gap and the Gain. He has co-authored books with Dan Sullivan for several of his books. 10x is better than 2x, and Be Your Future Self Now. A lot of their teachings have influenced not only my business but my life. So I was fortunate enough to be a student of Dr. Hardy's just this past January, and so that was pretty influential, and I'm really grateful for being given that opportunity.
What's your favorite book?
uh, Probably Be Your Future Self Now, ironically written by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. So, little
I have to
shout
check
out
it
to
out.
Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And I mean,
Yeah.
he's got a ton of following. He is so smart. He does a great job of delivering information, these concepts in a way that a lot of people can relate to. So, love that book, Be Your Future
What's
Self.
like one takeaway you took away from that book that you remember? Like this is gonna stick.
Yeah. Uh, Here's a good one. So, you know how I teach about leveraging your prodigy brain strengths and those 5 strengths. One of them is the ability to align with your future
Mm,
self or your source. And so, if you are somebody who loves to set goals, you most often default, thinking of the goal at the finish line and where you're at today in the context of how far away from the finish line you are. So you're thinking about, working your way towards the goal. But when you
Mm-hmm.
tap into your future self, you're actually working from, you're not working to your future self. You're actually working from your future self. So it's like you're standing in the shoes of the future you who's already achieved the goal. And you work from that place, not from the present to that place. You have to really contextualize the future you so that you
Mm-hmm.
can step into the essence of that person and then
Mm-hmm.
literally use the wisdom of that future you to guide the present you. It's it's a mind-boggling like concept. I love it. I totally love it. So yeah, that's
No, I
definitely a
get
take.
it. I get it. Yeah, it's that reminded me of that. I don't know if you heard of that Steve Jobs quote about connecting the dots or something.
Oh, I'm sure I have heard.
Let
I
me
mean,
see if I
I do
can
a lot
find
of
it real
future
quick.
self work, and so I'm sure I've heard it. But
He said, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards."
yeah, so if you take that like concept, that idea, and you step into your future self in a retrospective way, which is so
Yeah.
like counterintuitive, but if you can do that, that's how you're going to connect the dots, right?
Mm-hmm.
So many people rely on their past to decide what it is that they're capable of doing. Use your future self to give you the wisdom of what they've already accomplished to decide what you're capable of. If you yet let the past you decide what you're capable of, all you're going to do is continue to create what you've already created, which might be good. But if you're somebody who thinks of yourself as a creator or an innovator, you want to tap into your future self to decide what's possible. So,
I
Steve
mean,
Jobs,
in a way, you're thinking of the past you, because when you think, it's like you're thinking of both. It's like you're sitting in that future, thinking of who you are now and what you
right,
have to do.
right.
And
That's the
I think,
perspective.
yeah, I think what helps that is if you are stuck in thinking of, oh, the past me can't do this. Well, you're creating the past you now when you think of the future. So create new a new version of the past you
Yes,
now.
yes. And that's super. So, a question that I like to talk about is the difference between you, you, the physical manifestation that you see when you're looking in the mirror versus yourself. And people, I
Mm,
get a lot of podcast hosts who want to talk about that for the entire hour because it's so fascinating because there's this physical part of you. And then there's the non physical part of you that is way bigger. It makes up way more of your essence. And that's your past,
mm,
present, and future self. It's how you narrate, right? And
mm,
so it takes tripping the trigger of your imagination, which a lot of people don't do. Like they like to rely on their memory, not their
mm,
imagination. But if you use your imagination to rewrite a narrative about your past that actually serves you because you're the only person that has the opportunity to do that, why wouldn't you do that? Because
mm,
that narrative becomes something very believable and the biggest part of yourself. So there's the physical part that's you that you are looking at in the mirror. And then there's the non physical part, the past, the present, and the future and how you identify, what's the narrative, the beliefs
Mm-hmm.
about that triad. And so it really does, warrant energy and effort to decide, how do I want to think about my past? Like I told you earlier, I wouldn't change any of that. I used to make
Mm-hmm.
that mean, that I was completely broken and completely unworthy because I was an overweight child. I don't think like that anymore. I completely changed the way I think about my past. It happened
Mm-hmm.
for me. It put me in the position I'm in today to help thousands and thousands of people. I have tons of compassion for those kind of people. I'm really grateful for having that experience. I've totally rewrote the script about how I think about my past. It now serves me, right? And so, same thing goes for the present and same thing goes for my future. Like my future self, it's like move over Ben Hardy and Steve Jobs and all the people like that. They're going to be like shoulder to shoulder with Tracy Pleschourt future self. Like I see it so clearly.
Nah, we're gonna be better
Yeah.
than that. No, I love your ambition. It's magnetic. I
Thank
love meeting people who have ambition, and I also have the ambition of reaching the top charts of
you.
podcasting world. So
Amazing. Amazing. You're doing good work.
you too.
Thank you.
But let's finish these questions.
Okay.
My next question: what is one lesson you had to learn the hard way?
Whew. Um, oh man. I most recently, because I've picked up the game of pickleball, and I have learned that there always has to be a loser in order to create a winner. And sometimes the loser has to be me. And I don't like to lose, but I have
Mm-hmm.
really started to think a lot about that. Like the competitive part of me, you know, I need to lose to keep that fire going. So
Mm-hmm.
recently that has been a lesson because I can choose to think about losing. Like my daughter and I were in a tournament recently and we lost. We literally took last place.
Mm-hmm.
And I left there feeling so bad about myself and like, I should just give it up. I'm horrible, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hang tight. Whoa, 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 whoa. And I really had to decide how I wanted to think about it. And I decided that, there always has to be a loser in order for there to be a winner. That's just the way it goes when you're in
Yeah.
competition. And I'm
Yeah.
okay with being that person. And that actually is driving me to practice more and to join more competitions and more leagues and things like that. So it was a lesson that I learned in a way. I mean, it was painful. It was painful to lose, to do so poorly in that competition. But I
Mm-hmm.
started to think about it like there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser. And you know what? I will gladly take my turn at being the loser because I know that that will serve me in some way. So now
Mm.
I, not in a sacrificial type way, but I am willing to lose sometimes. It's okay. So it was a lesson.
Well, I think it's just about like it's like when I think of that story, I think of like if of setbacks, and those setbacks are temporary losses and how
Hmm.
you show up every day. So it's like, yeah, you lost, but you can, you're not like dead, right? Like it's not the end of the world. Like,
Yeah,
and
if
you
you
can keep
challenge
trying
yourself,
and you keep getting better. Yeah.
yeah, challenge yourself to find the gift and the opportunity and even the circumstances that, are unwanted, there's always a gift and opportunity you can find. 100%. If you use that as your lens in under any circumstance, it's so helpful because now you've just challenged your brain to go out and find it, and it will find it.
Hmm. Yeah, and especially if you're like very competitive, and you really have to ask yourself, like, why did I lose? That's just a
Oh,
learning
sorry.
lesson right there.
Yep. Sorry about that.
It's
I do
like,
put my,
how
I
can I
do
get
put my,
better?
yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh no, I was just saying, like, yeah, like that's when you lose, you can ask yourself, like, how can I get better? Why did I lose? Etc.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But my next question is, what would you want to experience if you had all the time and all the money in the world? Or what would you do?
Hmm. I think a lot of people answer that question with like, "Oh, I would travel."
Yep.
Um, I think I would probably think like find myself want to put myself in places where I can meet music.
Hmm.
Event like South by Southwest, or if it's a learn like a TED Talk or something like that. Like if I had all the money in the world, I would probably be on this expedition of like, how do I get in the proximity of some of these people that I really admire and learn from them. And often like um without like interfering with what it is that they're doing on the day to day. Like I like really going to organized events and taking advantage of those kind of things. That's totally my jam. And so I would probably put myself in more of those kind of areas, TED Talks. And
What would you do with all that knowledge, though,
I would
after you get
I
that?
would I would probably continue to do a lot of the things I'm doing right now. Like I
Hmm.
truly am like writing the script of the ultimate self-made life as we go. And
Yeah.
very little of what I do right now would I change. I would
Hmm.
share it. I would use it as a source of inspiration. Um, I don't know. I mean, we have our workbook, we have our day planner, but I've never really considered like writing a book or doing any of that. But I think if it was a tool that actually got me, you know, in better proximity with some of the influencers that I really admire, I would maybe consider that. But I think there's other ways to do that too. And so, yeah, my daughter has that same kind of love. So my daughter is my business partner. She's 23 years old and we have our own podcast. Her name is Gracie. My name is Tracy. So the podcast is called Tracy and Gracie Becoming. And
Yeah.
so we share a lot of like what it is that we've learned, and we give the perspective of a 51-year-old versus a 23-year-old on all things. We call it like, getting
That's like
the gender.
double. That's like double her age.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you
I'm
get
not
the
calling you. I'm
generational.
not calling you old. I'm just.
Well, I am her mom, so
That
yeah,
was
yeah.
just a
It's just fun to
perspective.
give. It's fun to give generational perspectives on all things, and so I would just use that wisdom and continue to share it the way I'm doing it right now.
No, that's awesome. Is there any last thing you'd like to share with the audience before we close out?
Um, we have Self-Made You has a lot of free resources, and one of the things that, like I said, I am living the life I really do love, and we are able to give back, and we like to offer free resources, and one of those resources is called Free Coaching Friday. So on any given Friday, you can just go to selfmadeyou.com. You can sign up in advance, but you can sign up right at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. And then you can be a part of a group coaching call and really get a sense of what it's like to apply that self framework to any
Mm-hmm.
circumstance. If you're struggling with, certain results in your life, feelings, any thoughts, you can come and get free coaching. And so I would encourage people to check that out. We check out our day planner, and we have a free tutorial on how to use that. And then we have Morning Mastery, which is a $600 program for 7 weeks. That's a deep dive in really applying the self framework to each and every day over a quarter's worth of time. So lots and lots of resources for people. So I just encourage your listeners to go check that out at selfmadeyou.com.
So everyone, go check her out. Go support her. I'm super grateful to have had you on,
Thank
and I
you.
love what you're doing, and I think our ambitions are aligned, and I hope we achieve our ambitions. And
We will. No doubt
yeah,
about it. We will.
thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Thomas. So nice to meet you.
And as always, everyone, stay curious, keep going. You got this. Peace.